I remember how it all began, as if it were only yesterday, even though years have passed and so much has changed. My name is Jake, and I was just an ordinary guy, completely in love when I first met Ashley at a party hosted by mutual friends. She shone with a light that drew everyone's eyes, and I immediately felt that she was the one I was meant to spend my life with. Her smile was like a ray of sunshine scattering dark clouds, and her gaze was deep and inviting, like an endless ocean in which I lost myself, forgetting everything else. We talked until dawn, sharing dreams and plans, building castles of hope, and in those moments I believed I had found my other half. Yet even then, subtle shadows flitted in the background, harbingers of the future pain I was unaware of. Our relationship advanced swiftly and wholeheartedly. We spent hours wandering through the night city where the twinkling lights and the gentle hum of urban life created an almost magical atmosphere. I recall sitting on a park bench with her one evening as Ashley spoke about how much she valued freedom, passion, and above all, sincerity. Those words seemed as though they had been chiseled out especially for us, and I promised myself that I would keep that sincerity alive no matter what. Every encounter with her filled me with joy. Every gesture was like a promise of eternal happiness. But in hindsight, I now realize that happiness is often deceiving, and behind every beautiful facade, something entirely different might be hiding. Over time, small inconsistencies began to appear. She started coming home late without explanation, her phone was always within reach, and sometimes there was an unspoken reservation in her tone that I couldn't quite decipher. At first, I dismissed it as the result of her busy life and her creative approach to work, a desire to remain independent and free, like a true soul destined to wander between dreams and reality. Yet every omitted detail, every evasive reply stirred a growing unease in me, slowly turning into deep suspicion. Sometimes watching her, I caught a glimmer of mystery in her eyes, as if she were concealing an entire world, one that I was never meant to understand, a world in which I was merely a guest. One evening, during one of our long walks through the city as the cool night air mingled with the scent of autumn leaves, I tried to ask her about the worries that troubled her. Instead of an honest answer, I was met with a slight smile and a swift change of subject. Inside me, conflicting emotions raged, a desire to trust, hope for something better, and an ever-growing uncertainty, as if every word she uttered masked a lie. These moments, filled with ambiguity, began to unravel my world where love and trust once reigned. I found myself desperately trying to recall every little detail of her behavior, the smiles, the glances, hoping to find some explanation. Perhaps I was even fabricating these doubts, wrapping them in drama and tragedy that had never truly existed. Yet the more I tried to rationalize the situation, the clearer it became that things were not as simple as they seemed. I felt increasingly isolated, as though I were trapped in a labyrinth where every path led only to more questions without satisfying answers. There were countless evenings when I lay on the dark floor of our bedroom, listening to my own breath and trying to sense the warmth of her presence that once so comforted my soul. Memories of the gentle way she would touch my hand, the sound of her laughter filling the room, the confident way she looked at me. All these recollections now seemed like a fading dream, dissolving into a harsh, cold reality. Every minute without her smile, without her voice, felt like an eternity, and I found myself wondering if this sudden chill was merely the beginning of something far more sinister, a precursor to the end of our shared path. Autumn arrived not only with changes in nature, but in our relationship as well. The falling leaves seemed to symbolize how our once vibrant feelings were withering under the weight of unspoken words and hidden truths. On one such autumn evening, when the wind whispered of lost time, I accidentally discovered a letter in her handbag addressed to another man. The name on it, Michael, struck me like a bolt of lightning, and in that instant, the world I knew crumbled into dust. In that moment, I felt the full weight of betrayal. Every second, every moment we had built together now seemed founded on deceit. My thoughts flitted between the past and the present, trying desperately to understand how the one I loved so dearly, the one with whom I had shared not only joy but dreams, could have changed so completely. It is impossible to put into words the agony I felt when I realized that the trust I had given her so wholly had been nothing but a sham. Fear, anger, and despair mingled into one bitter emotion that tore at me from the inside. A small voice inside whispered that I should have seen the signs earlier, that I had been too blind to recognize the illusion of perfect love. But how could anyone foresee something that struck as suddenly as a thunderclap on a clear day? Every small detail, every hesitant glance and quiet sigh became like a sentence, condemning me to the inevitable destruction of something that once felt inviolable. And so began my descent into a world of pain and loneliness, where I had to learn how to live with the betrayal that left an indelible mark on my soul. After discovering that letter, my life turned upside down. That very evening, sitting in the half-dark living room, I could hardly believe my eyes or fathom how my trembling hands clutched the thin sheet bearing Michael's name. Every fiber of my being screamed of betrayal, and I felt as though the entire world around me was sinking into silent disapproval. Time seemed to stop, leaving me alone with a pain that deepened with every passing moment. The sounds of the street and the soft rustle of leaves outside my window all became mere background to the inner tragedy I was trying to comprehend. For hours I sat in darkness, replaying every moment when everything had seemed perfect, when Ashley had embodied tenderness and warmth. The memories of our early encounters, long conversations, and shared laughter now turned into cold, ominous images stripped of the honesty they once held. Every touch, every smile that had once filled me with joy now appeared as nothing more than a mask concealing hidden secrets. I realized that the trust I had given her so freely was as fragile as thin ice, ready to shatter under the weight of unspoken words and buried truths. Unable to bear the torment any longer, I resolved to leave the house and take a walk, hoping that the cool night might ease the storm of emotions raging within me. The cold evening greeted me like an echo of my inner despair, and the city lights, indifferent and distant, bore silent witness to my suffering. I wandered aimlessly through familiar streets that had once been the backdrop to our shared dreams and quiet conversations. Every sound and every rustle of leaves stirred echoes of the past, and my thoughts relentlessly dragged me back to that fateful moment when I saw that dreadful letter. Before long, I found myself in a small cafe we often visited together in the evenings. Now that place felt foreign, a realm haunted by the ghosts of lost hopes. Seated at a far corner table, I tried to gather my scattered thoughts, as if writing an invisible diary in my mind. I searched desperately for some logic in the chaos, recalling her words about love being a complex feeling that demands freedom and sincerity. But how could such freedom turn into the demolition of trust? Every recollection of our conversations, every promise she had made, now rang hollow, leaving me with a tightening pain in my heart. Finally, I decided I could no longer remain captive to my own memories. Steeling myself, I called her, hoping to get answers to the questions that tormented me. Her voice on the other end of the line was cool and detached, as if she were deliberately distancing herself from everything that had happened. We agreed to meet in an old city park where we had once spent long, dream-filled evenings. I thought that in that familiar place we might find the truth. Yet reality was far harsher. When I saw Ashley sitting on an old bench beneath the soft glow of street lamps, an unspoken tension hung between us like an invisible barrier. We sat in silence for several minutes as we both struggled to grasp the magnitude of what had occurred. At last, I spoke, my words trembling with pain and disappointment. I asked her how she could betray me so completely, how she could shatter the trust we had painstakingly built. Her answers were vague, filled with excuses about shifting feelings and the inherent complexities of human nature. But in her tone, I heard no sincerity, only a cold justification that deepened my wound. Every word she uttered felt like another lie, another nail in the coffin of our once sacred bond. We talked for what seemed like hours, and with every word exchanged, I sensed the gradual disappearance of what had once united us. Anger slowly gave way to deep disillusionment and an overwhelming emptiness. I tried to understand how people who had once seemed so perfect could hide entire worlds of secrets behind their smiles. In her eyes, once brimming with light, now shone only a void, as though she had long ago surrendered a part of her soul to someone else. This realization struck me with the force of a crushing blow, shattering every illusion I had so painstakingly built around our love. After the meeting, I was left alone with my thoughts. In the dimming twilight of the park, seated on that same old bench, I wrestled with the question of what had led us to this nightmare. Had I been too blind to see the tiny signs she had offered? Or was it that fate had long decreed our love was doomed to fall apart? Every new question only deepened my despair, making my heart race with mounting anxiety and hopelessness. Days turned into weeks as I began to search for solace in activities that once brought me joy. I picked up my guitar again, trying to coax from its strings the melody that could fill the void left by Ashley's betrayal. Each note resonated like a cry from my soul, expressing both the sorrow and the fragile hope for healing. In those moments I realized that pain, like music, has its own harmony, even if it sounds dissonant and makes the heart ache. In my quest for inner balance, I spent more time alone, wandering through city parks where nature moved at its own slow pace. I watched leaves, fallen in autumn, swirling in the air as if to remind me that even after the harshest winter, spring inevitably comes. These solitary walks not only distracted me, but also helped me understand what I had lost and what I might yet regain. Every step along those familiar paths was an attempt to reconnect with myself, with the person I was, before the world had been shattered by betrayal. Then, on one such evening as twilight cloaked the city in a soft haze, I met Brian, a longtime friend who always knew the right words to soothe my troubled soul. We happened upon each other on the street, and his caring, understanding gaze silently said, "I'm here for you." Brian invited me to join him in a small cafe, and over steaming cups of coffee, we talked about life, about the sting of betrayal, and about the importance of not losing faith in oneself during even the darkest hours. His words were like a gentle call, slowly reminding me that even in a world filled with heartbreak, there are people who care. In the ensuing nights, as I sat by the window watching the city's lights blink in the distance, I found solace in a flicker of hope in each distant glow. I wondered how one could continue living when trust, the most delicate of treasures, had been so brutally broken. Yet, with each new dawn, there was a whisper of reassurance, a silent promise that time might mend these wounds. I began to write down every thought, every emotion in my diary, a practice that gradually helped me piece together my shattered inner world. Though the memories of Ashley's betrayal still haunted me, I started to see them as lessons rather than just raw pain. As time passed, I gradually turned my focus inward. I began to immerse myself in my own thoughts, taking long walks and reflecting on the complexities of my feelings. In one of those evenings, as the dusk settled softly over the city, I met Emily, a kind-eyed, gentle-voiced girl who, as it turned out, had also known loss. Her story, marked by its own scars and hardships, resonated with me, and our quiet conversations in cozy corners of the city slowly began to heal parts of my wounded heart. Emily taught me to look beyond the darkness, to notice the glimmers of light even in the shadowiest corners. Her supportive words and gentle advice helped me realize that forgiveness is not a sign of weakness, but of true strength. With each passing day, I learned to trust my intuition and to listen to the quiet voice inside that told me true healing does not come from forgetting, but from embracing the pain and finding its meaning. I continued to record my thoughts in my diary, capturing not only the events of the day, but the subtleties of my emotions and the fleeting images that drifted through my mind. These pages eventually transformed from a chronicle of loss into a testament of my rebirth, a declaration that even the most devastating betrayal can serve as a stepping stone toward growth and renewed hope. Months passed, and my life slowly began to fill with new hues. I resolved to embark on a small journey out of the city, believing that a change of scenery could clear the mind and offer fresh perspectives. I chose a quiet coastal town where time seemed to slow, and the ocean breeze swept away the remnants of old sorrows. There, amidst the crashing waves and the endless expanse of the sea, I managed for a while to forget the pain, immersing myself in an atmosphere of peace and tranquility. Wandering through narrow streets, chatting with the locals, and watching the sun dip below the horizon allowed me to view my life from a new vantage point. A clear, fearless perspective akin to the vast sky overhead. On that journey, I reconnected with Mark, an old acquaintance whose path had once intersected mine before we lost contact. Mark was a man of rich experience, and his calm wisdom left me in awe from the moment we met. Sitting by the sea, he recounted tales of his own highs and lows, of how each blow of fate had tempered his soul, rendering it stronger. His words were like a soft melody that soothed my inner storms, and I sensed that his stories were more than mere anecdotes. They were a heartfelt testament to the unwavering flow of life, regardless of the hardships. We spoke of love and forgiveness, of the importance of accepting oneself with all the flaws and missteps. That conversation marked a turning point, as I began to realize that only through acceptance and forgiveness can one truly break free of the past. Returning to the city was not just a physical transition, it was an inner shift. I re-entered the rhythm of daily life with a renewed outlook. My interactions with Emily, Jade, and even Laura took on a new dimension, not as attempts to smother the pain, but as conscious steps towards self-improvement and a search for genuine values. Every meeting with a close friend, every kind word of support, became a beacon guiding me toward the realization that there is always room in this world for sincerity and warmth. I learned not to avoid memories of the past, but to regard them as lessons that help us grow. Though images of Ashley would sometimes resurface in my mind with a sting, I no longer felt compelled to drown in despair. Instead, I viewed them as part of the complex journey that had led me to new discoveries. I realized that betrayal is not the end of the road, but an opportunity to start anew, to reassess one's priorities, and to muster the strength to move forward. That bitter experience ignited in me a desire to strive for better, to seek inner harmony, and learn to appreciate the moments when the heart beats with newfound strength. Gradually, I began to place more trust in my own feelings. Every encounter, every word of support from friends, even strangers, became another brick in the wall I was building around my heart, protecting it without isolating it from the world. I came to understand that love is not only about passion and intense emotions, but also about the calm that follows after a storm. Love is about accepting life in all its forms, forgiving, and finding within oneself the strength to open one's heart once again. One morning, I awoke to the gentle light of dawn streaming through my window, as the city slumbered quietly outside. In that moment, I sensed a profound change stirring within me, a realization that every crack in my heart, every scar left by Ashley's betrayal, had become a marker of the journey I had traversed, proof that even the deepest pain can lead to new beginnings. In the months that followed, I devoted myself to understanding and accepting the transformations that had swept over my life like a sudden storm. Each morning began with a long gaze out the window, watching as sunbeams broke through a light haze, a silent reminder that after the darkest night, a new day inevitably dawns. I started to view the wounds inflicted by Ashley's infidelity not as curses, but as integral chapters of my story, proof that life, even when it brings pain, also teaches us invaluable lessons. I immersed myself more in my inner world, journaling not only the events of each day, but also the smallest sensations, thoughts, and images that came to mind. This practice helped me sort through the chaos left in the wake of betrayal and gradually build confidence in my own strength. The pages of my diary filled with recollections of the past, the anxieties of the present, and dreams of the future. I wrote about how the pain of infidelity left an indelible mark, yet also how it taught me to forgive, to love, and to appreciate the moments when life truly blossoms. One of the most vivid episodes during that time was my decision to take a short trip outside the city. I had always believed that a change of scenery could clear the mind and offer fresh perspectives. I chose a quiet coastal town where time itself seemed to slow, and the sea breeze swept away the remnants of past sorrows. Amid the crashing waves and the boundless expanse of the ocean, I managed, if only temporarily, to forget the pain as I embraced an atmosphere of calm and renewal. Strolling along narrow streets, engaging in heartfelt conversations with locals, and watching the sun sink below the horizon allowed me to view my life from a new, unafraid perspective. On that journey, I re-encountered Mark, an old friend whose life experience and steady calm left a lasting impression on me. We sat by the water as he shared stories of his own triumphs and failures, explaining how every blow of fate had strengthened his soul. His words, gentle and sincere, resonated within me and reinforced my belief that life, despite its hardships, marches on. We talked about love, forgiveness, and the importance of accepting ourselves with all our flaws. That conversation was a turning point. It made me understand that only by accepting and forgiving can we truly liberate ourselves from the past. Returning to the city marked not only a physical relocation, but also an inner transition. I rejoined the daily rhythm of life with a fresh outlook. My interactions with Emily, Jade, and Laura gradually took on a new hue. Not as attempts to drown out the pain, but as deliberate steps toward self-development and the pursuit of genuine values. Every encounter with friends, every word of support, became a guiding star reminding me that the world still held room for sincerity and warmth. I learned to face my memories instead of avoiding them, regarding each painful recollection as a lesson that contributed to my growth. Although Ashley's image would occasionally flash in my mind, I no longer sank into despair. I began to see those moments as part of a complicated journey that had led me to new insights. I realized that betrayal is not the end but an opportunity to start over, to redefine one's priorities and summon the courage to move forward. One morning, I awoke as the city still slumbered, with the first soft rays of sunlight gently filtering through my curtains. In that quiet moment, I sensed an irreversible change within me, a growing understanding and acceptance that transformed every crack and scar in my heart into a testament to the path I had traveled, proof that even the deepest pain can give birth to a new life. Over the following months, I immersed myself in my inner world. I began keeping a detailed journal, chronicling not only the day's events, but every nuanced feeling, thought, and image that emerged. These entries helped me untangle the chaos left by betrayal and gradually instilled in me a deep belief in my own resilience. My diary transformed from a record of loss into a manifesto of rebirth, a declaration that though the wounds of infidelity might never completely vanish, they could be reshaped into stepping stones toward forgiveness, love, and a future brimming with possibility. Then, one final morning arrived. A day when the past, the present, and the future converged into a harmonious symphony of life. I awoke early while the city still slumbered, and as the soft, tentative rays of the sun began to penetrate the darkness, I felt something within me change for good. Every fracture in my heart, every lingering pain from Ashley's betrayal, had become a marker of my journey, a reminder that even after the deepest wound, there's always a chance for renewal. I no longer sought solace in sleepless nights or bitter memories. Instead, I listened to the gentle voice of my soul that whispered that every loss was not an end, but the beginning of something new. The days filled with creativity, long walks, and heartfelt gatherings with close friends had granted me a new perspective. A gratitude for every moment, for every lesson, even if it had come through pain. Now, as I sit in a quiet park, a place that once was the backdrop of dreams with Ashley, I see it transformed from a stage of sorrow into a symbol of change. Watching the light breeze sway the branches of the trees, I see in every movement the reflection of a soul yearning for renewal. I have learned that life, despite all its trials, continues unabated, and that every one of us has the opportunity to begin again, to see the world with fresh eyes, and to embrace peace. In the evenings, over a strong cup of coffee at a small table, I reflect on how life interweaves joy and sorrow, how the painful memories of the past have become the foundation for the future. I have learned to forgive not only others, but also myself for the mistakes that once seemed to leave permanent scars. On this long, winding path, I came to understand that true freedom arises when we stop battling our own weaknesses and begin to accept them as an integral part of who we are. Now, standing at the threshold of a new day, I see not the broken man once shattered by betrayal, but someone who has discovered inner strength and self-assurance. My reflection is no longer merely a face etched with pain, but a symbol of overcoming, a sign that life endures, regardless of the trials we face. I know now that genuine healing comes with acceptance, with self-love, and with the realization that every loss is an opportunity to gain something new. The mistakes and pain of my past have faded into a gentle whisper of memory, a reminder of where I came from, but not a definition of who I am today. I face the future with an open heart, confident that it holds not only new challenges, but also moments of joy, discovery, and true love. In this final, reflective moment, when the city is bathed in the soft glow of sunset, I feel the past dissolving into the light of the present, leaving behind only warm memories and an endless desire to live, create, and share a love that will never fade. This is not the end of my journey, but the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another, marked by a profound understanding that every moment is precious and that after the fiercest storm, a calm always follows, bringing with it hope and the promise of a better tomorrow. And so I continue onward, cherishing each step, each breath, and each new day, with the firm belief that despite every trial, there will always be light to guide me and a love that endures.